So let's do this about social media, because I do not want to disappoint. Even though social media was your #1 choice, I am going to defer that conversation to 2 other sessions. The first session is tomorrow at 11. You all should have seen that we have Jess Starr from the West Hartford Market Center on for 30 minutes. It is not long. If you come late, you're going to miss all the good stuff, right? So 11 to 11:30, Jess Starr will be on. She is in the state of Connecticut. She is the one to listen to about how to work social media as a connection tool, as a lead generation tool, as a I'll even go so far as to say a lead conversion tool. She's got it going on. Is Donna on? Yes, she is. Donna, Jess, I know, is on the James Shaw call a lot, and so
unbelievable. She's unbelievable. I'm like, is it going to be recorded? Because I have something to do tomorrow at 11. I'm about to change my plans. I mean, she is such a rock star. I mean, wow. I don't want to miss it. And I get every morning for a couple of minutes. She adds, she's so generous, and she's got this on lock. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, indeed. So as part of our pre-family reunion series to bring you, we are featuring Jess tomorrow. So I want you to definitely plug into that, and it will be recorded just in case you are unable to be there. I should say it will be recorded unless Jess tells us that she doesn't want it recorded. I always need to kind of, I can't believe that Jess Starr will care. As a matter of fact, I think she would prefer it would be recorded so we could play it over and over again so more and more people see her stuff. However, at 11 o'clock tomorrow, the second person I'm going to defer to is who we had as a guest on our 9 a.m. call this morning. Who was on the 9 a.m. call this morning to see Lucy Parker? Boy, that is not a lot of hands. You all have to be on the 9 o'clock calls every morning. Oh, I see. That was just, I'm not going to raise my hand because I think he can't see me, but I can see most of you because you have your cameras on. So make sure you're on those 9 o'clock calls in the morning. I'll tell you what, we're going to continue to find really cool guests. Lucy was on this morning. As you can see, she's a massive bundle of energy. She is, as well, is the real deal. We've been talking to her for probably the last 12 months or so about buying an investment property in Dubai, and she has been so crazy helpful with us to kind of walk us through, as Americans buying in a foreign country, which we have never done before. Maybe some of you have. I've never done that before. Kind of walking us through what that looks like in the UAE, and I just love to listen to her talk, and like, the energy is contagious. So we are also bringing her back for, I think her session is an hour or a 2-hour session. So she's going to give us all of her social media tricks, strategies, and hacks, and that will be in the next. It'll be before we finish this call, because if you're looking for success on social media, I am not your guy, right? And so I'm going to defer to the people who really are the experts in that. What I can say to you is this: 2 or 3 years ago, you would have heard me say in this session that social media doesn't really belong on this. Either somebody has a live mic or we're being invaded by something otherworldly. I think the Guardians of the Galaxy just broke through and are coming. So the idea of social media to me was really more from the perspective of being a relationship tool, right? You can create, certainly, and develop and nurture relationships utilizing social media. However, for me, the lead generation and lead conversion aspect of it really happened offline, right? It was a place where you could connect and get to know and, again, nurture those relationships. And then if you were going to actually push people into a business relationship, you were being pushed to a phone conversation. I still kind of feel that way. However, I've been proven wrong over and over and over again by people like Lucy Parker and Jessica Starr, who have taken social media into a level that is simply just beyond my skill set at present, right? So I'm as excited to listen to them as you about how they're using it to really generate leads, not just generate relationships, generate real business leads, and then how they're using the social media aspect of their world to convert those leads, to push those people to an actual phone-to-phone or face-to-face appointment. So I'm really excited to kind of dive through that with you. That may have been a little bit of a tease. Maybe it was unfair of me to put that on the list today, because then you thought you were going to get all that social media stuff. However, let me ask this. Would you rather me plod through and read from a book, or would you rather hear from Lucy and Jess about how to really do this at a high level? I know the answer, right? You get to hear me plod through a book for everything else. We're going to rely on them for that. So that'll be exciting. And we're not just talking about Facebook, by the way. We're talking about Facebook, we're talking about LinkedIn, we're talking about Instagram. Minimally, those three platforms will be part of the conversation. I know events and live streaming are going to be part of the conversation, right? So this is not like your parents' social media conversation that we're going to have. We're going to have like a social media conversation about how to utilize these tools at a really high level, doing things that only a select few are doing right now, successfully. Right, here's my last little thought on social media, because it is a little bit of a warning. My warning on social media is that be really cautious that you have not decided to grow your business 110% on a platform that you may not understand how to really maximally use yet. Now, I don't know who I'm talking to when I'm saying that. I know I'm talking to myself, right? So if I'm talking to anyone else but me, just be careful. And here's why I say that, because I have watched people over time in the last couple of years sitting in the office and like, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm lead generating. And I look at what they're doing. They're sitting at a computer, like liking people's lunch photos from the weekend. And suddenly they think that they're working when maybe that's not exactly what you need to be doing. Again, I get how we're utilizing social media to create and nurture relationships. I just don't want you to fall into a trap of thinking that sitting and playing on social media is the same as actually working, because it's not. And Jess Starr and Lucy Parker will make it very clear that those are two different things. Make sense? Okay, cool. I do not dislike social media. I actually love social media. I don't really use it all that often. And yet, or let me restate that. I don't use it, period. And yet the idea of utilizing that tool to create and grow more business is actually very exciting to me. Don't go home today and say, oh my goodness, that guy that we have to listen to, what a dork. He doesn't know Facebook from his elbow. And here's the good news. You don't have to listen to me. It's a choice. It's a choice that you make. So that's fun too. All right, so what was number 2 on our list? Because that's our social media conversation. Come back tomorrow at 11 and come and plug into Lucy Parker. And the two of them will show you how to utilize those platforms at a really, really high level, give you tips and strategies and great shortcuts to make sure that you are getting what you need. Number 2 on the list was loyalty programs in your database, right? And here's why I'm so excited that you chose that as number 2. I'm excited you chose that as number 2 because there is one source of business that beats all other sources of business across both sides of the business. And here's what I mean. The number 1 source of business for listing inventory for most real estate agents in the United States is their database. Let me ask you this. What's the number one source for buyer business?
Your sphere of influence.
You got it. It's your database all over again, right? So your database is the number one source of business for most agents for both buyer and seller business across the country. If it is true for most agents across the country, trust me when I tell you, it will be or certainly can be true for you if you choose to actually do the things that make sense to do with your database, right? It's kind of why we start with a database discussion, because your database is that foundation, right? How many of you were on with Debbie at 3 o'clock yesterday where she showed you how to start developing that database, right? I already told you, you all have a database. It lives here in your phone. If you have no other database to use, just migrate this from your phone into Command. Start there. I forget who was the winner on Monday. I think it was Jerome, if I'm not mistaken. Jerome had like, half the population of the United States, I think, in his phone. And so the good news is there's still the other half of the population for the rest of you. Jerome's got half. We'll have to split up the other half. But there's plenty of business to come from that one half. And Jerome will wave to us on his quick ascent up. He'll remember the little people. He promised me that. So let's talk about your database, and let's talk about your ability to feed your database. If you don't really need to be in it. I'm gonna spend just a minute or so in Power Session 1 still. In Power Session 1 on page 31, just in case you happen to have it handy. If you don't, you don't need to be inside of it. I'll just tell you what it says. The materials talk about the 4 powerful habits to make sure that you are growing and keeping your database healthy. And those 4 habits are weekly habits, right? And what that looks like is habit number 1, add 10 new contacts a day. Add 10 new contacts a day. Talk to me about how that sounds. Does that sound easy? Does that sound hard? Does that sound...
Sounds challenging to me, Rick.
Yeah, so challenging. And so the idea is, the idea ultimately is start with the database that you have. Right? See, to me, finding 10 a day, if you have a database of 200 sitting in your phone, well, to keep it manageable, right? We talked about this yesterday, I think. Do you dump all of your contacts in at once and start them on an email campaign, or do you move them slowly? So here's where I get to tell you, if I had to pick one of the two, I am personally more in favor of moving things slowly, 10 or 20 at a time, and actually making a phone call to each of those people as you move them. Because now you have the opportunity to do the that actually gets you the results. My concern about dumping everybody in at once and then just pushing a button and having a program start is that program, which is the 36 touch, right? And we're going to talk about that shortly. That's 36 touches over the course of a year. So if you do the math on that, it's touch every 10 days. Does that sound a little bit like stalking? Trust me, restraining orders are not part of the system. And when you do it right, it doesn't feel like stalking. It feels like people receiving information that is of use to them and you coming from contribution. We'll talk about that in just half a second. Adding 10 new contacts, so that my concern about dumping all of your contacts in and then pushing a button into a system like that is that you'll get a notification that a call needs to be made. And if you're Jerome, you get a notification that you need to call 4,000 people.
43,000 people.
Right? So now I did some research, and Jerome's a talented man, and yet I'm not sure that he has the capability of calling 4,000 people like that week or in that 2-week period of time, right? And so what I like to do is kind of move them over and start the program at different times. So I'm going to start 10, 20, maybe 50 people on that program today. And then I'm going to move 10 more a day. And then this time next week, I'm going to push go again on another program. Right. So that the start dates are staggered. So that when you get reminders in the system, those reminders come a week or so in between. And then you can reasonably say, oh, okay, I have these 20 people to call this week. And then next week I have these 20 people to call. Again, it's not wrong to do it the other way. I just find that then all of a sudden you get notifications that you have to call massive quantities of people, and most people look at that and ignore it. And if you start to train your brain to ignore those reminders in the system, my concern is how are you then knowing who to call and when? Do you now have a database that goes a year without hearing from you, except for tons of emails? Email is great, but what do we know about email?
They can unsubscribe.
So A, they can unsubscribe. Can we stop there a second and talk about unsubscribe? I actually love when people unsubscribe. Why?
Because you're weeding out people.
It gives them the chance to call them.
Yeah, so Barbara hit the nail on the head where I was going. And it was funny because a bunch of you started to answer, but a lot of you were still muted. So there was a lot of mouthing going on. I think the mouthing was correct. For me, please don't send me anything more is a perfect opportunity to make a phone call and say, hey, I saw you unsubscribed. Did you mean to do that? I'm curious. If this information wasn't useful to you, is there information that would be useful to you that I could help customize what I send? I'm always looking for feedback about what my clients are looking for. So unsubscribe to me is not the that it seems like to a lot of people. I kind of like it because now I can have another conversation.
So sorry, so we get to see when they unsubscribed? We will be told?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that comes back to you in some way, shape, or form. I'm not 1,000% sure how you know that, but you do get a notice when someone unsubscribes. You probably get an email, right?
Okay.
Or a notification in the system.
Great.
Alex.
We did talk about that in command today.
Oh, good.
There are notifications. You get a little bell, and you should be checking those.
Got it. So I know there's a bunch of questions in the chat box. 10 new contacts a day can be whatever you choose it to be. In the beginning, it may be moving your contacts from wherever they are, right? Maybe it's your phone, maybe it's like a church directory, maybe it's your kids' Little League rosters. Maybe it's like the church roster. You know those rosters at the bottom that say, please do not use for business purposes? It's those that you move and then use for business purposes. So because when you come from contribution, people want and need the information that you are supplying. So I don't look at that as breaking the rules. I look at that as making sure people are well informed. Because remember, I know that I'm going to grant those people a level of service and skill that they may not get if they don't know that ultimately I'm their guy. Because in a weak moment, they may choose a weak agent. And then I'll feel terrible. So I'd rather break some of the rules up going in to make sure that people have a positive experience than be so rigid against around the rules on some of those rosters. And why do you think I say that? Because every time I say to people, use those rosters, and they say, oh, well, we can't do that. Do you think they're going to kick you out of church? Come on. If they kick you out of church, you come tell me. I'll go and speak to them. Right? All right. So the answer to what do I mean is, I mean, figure out how to be in touch with or find new opportunities with 10 new people a day. That may mean moving them from place to place into Command so that you can build your initial real estate database. It may mean finding new people, right? It may mean that you're building it for the first 5 or 6 weeks you're in business. It may mean from now until June, you're still kind of doing that 10 or 20 at a time. But it also means forever. So at some point you'll run out. And now you have to start looking around for additional folks. And yes, that does mean 50 a week. Now, is that sustainable, ongoing? Here's what I'll tell you. It depends on the activities that you focus on. If you host a whole bunch of open houses in a week and you have 5 or 6 people that come through the open house and you've hosted 4 open houses, isn't that half the people right there at open houses? If you're calling expireds and you connect with 5 or 10 expireds every single week, whether they grant you an appointment or grant you the opportunity to follow up with them again, you're adding them to your database. Well, now you're up to 35 people. You live a life, right? Who are you missing in your life? Is the person who you bought your car from last in your database? And do you remember that person like 6 weeks or 8 weeks from now when you drive past the dealership and think, oh man, like Maria Smith sold me my car. I don't think she's in my database. Or the next time you make an appointment to see your doctor, or the next time you go to the dry cleaner, right? So you have to start thinking about people differently to say, okay, could they use my services? When you start to really look at the activities that we're asking you to focus on, 50 a week forever, it's actually not all that difficult. And of course, that's the target. So if it ends up being 25 a week forever, okay. The point is your database is never done, right? Your database has to continually grow. Your database has to continue to have new blood be pumped into it, because some of the folks in your database are going to move away. Some of the folks in your database might die. Some of the folks in your database might get their license and become real estate agents. They don't need your services anymore. Or maybe their child does, or their parent does, right? So stuff happens inside of your database that if you're not continually filling it with new opportunities, it gets stale after a while. Do you see the point? So here's where I get to say, for those of you who think very literally, you can't be so literal about this stuff, right? Yes, it's 10 a day. If you end up with 5 a day and you're still pumping 25 people into your database new a week for as long as you run your business, is there benefit to that versus 0? Yes, of course, right? The next piece of this is speak to 10 people in your database every single day. Right? So that's why I think if you're adding 10 a day, especially if you're building your database initially, why not just pick the 10 that you're going to call, move them from one place into Command, and make a phone call to say, hey, how's it going? If you do one big transfer into your database, my concern is that you may now not get through everybody the way that you would have if you did them kind of in small groups. And what are you doing? What's the conversation? Regardless if you're brand new to the industry or you're here to continue to like relaunch your business. What's the conversation when you dial through your database? What could it be right now? Somebody give me the first 3 words that you can use right through the middle of February.
How are you doing?
Yeah.
Happy New Year to you, January. We can wish Happy New Year in January.
Right, so Erica is the winner of that game. Happy New Year are the 3 words I was looking for. Right, you can use that from the last couple of weeks of December all the way through mid to even late February. Happy New Year, especially if you haven't spoken to somebody since it was the new year. It's Rick Scott with Keller Williams Realty. Now, if this is your database, if it's Mets, if it's people you know, you probably don't have to tell them your whole name. You probably don't have to tell them the whole Keller Williams Realty thing. Unless you're brand new to the industry, then you may want to add that because it underlines the this is who I am and this is what I do portion of the call. And then here's the simple part of this. Just call and see how they're doing. How's it going? Well, it's weird. We're like in bizarro world still. Yeah, I get it. I'm curious, how have you fared in the last 10 months of bizarro world? What have you been doing to keep yourself sane? I'm curious, have you been like in homeschool hell like so many other people? Which form of alcohol have you started drinking heavily? Right, lots of different questions that you can have a conversation around, especially with your database of people you know, right? Because it's your Met database for all intents and purposes. So start there. Make it easy. Just make it easy. Here's the other thing I will encourage of you. If this sounds daunting to you, if this sounds like, oh my goodness, like I can't believe he's really going to make me call my database. What if you called and didn't ask a business question? Because many of you get hung up on, I don't want to call people I know and feel like I have my hand out trolling for business. The first thing I would say to you is I would be careful about that mindset, right? Change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. What if instead I'm going through my database and I see Alex in my database and think, oh my goodness, it's been a while since I've spoken to Alex. Man, wouldn't I feel foolish if all of a sudden her house popped on the market with somebody else? And when I say foolish, I mean, I would feel badly that I ignored her needs. Because if I had made the phone call and asked how she was doing and how she was coping with the environment that we have, and her answer was, you know what, we're not coping at all, as a matter of fact. We're done. We're going someplace that we don't have to deal with this. And then I might add, really? Where is that? Take me with you. And Alex says, we've decided to move to New Zealand because there's a 30-something-year-old female prime minister there who is killing it. I forget her name at the moment. If anyone remembers her name, put it in the chat box because I can't remember it. And so Alex has now decided she's done and she's going to New Zealand. And you know what? She knew a couple of different realtors and somebody else happened to call and make that. Yes, Jacinda, that's correct. Jacinda something or other. You're 100% right. See, Alex, are you really going to New Zealand? Isn't it weird that I chose you and then all of a sudden she decided to know who that was? We may have to figure out if there's reciprocity between Connecticut and New Zealand. So the idea of making those phone calls is about service. It's about making sure that you're there for people when they need you. Okay. Does that make sense? Don't make it about I'm trolling for business. Make it about I want to make sure that you remember that I'm here if you should need anything. The worst case scenario is I call Alex and we have a nice conversation and she says, oh, you know what, we're What are you gonna do? We're gonna plod through this like everybody else. Right? No moves for us this year. Awesome. Well, I'll talk to you soon. It was great talking to you. It doesn't have to be a business call, is the point I'm looking to make. So here's some homework. You knew it was coming, right? Here's what I want you to do between now and Tuesday. Between now and Tuesday, I want you to find 5 people. I am letting you off so easy. 5 people in 5 days. That's 1 a day. And I want you to call them. And I want you to have a version of the conversation that we just outlined. It's okay for me, if you want to choose your mother, your sister, like your other sister, your nephew, and your neighbor, right? Because you know you can have easy conversations with them. I'm okay with that. Make it as easy as possible. The idea is I want you to start feeling what it's like to make on-purpose phone calls into your database that start with, hi, how you doing? How's it going? What's this year been like for you? And if you spoke to somebody at Thanksgiving, well, then you don't have to ask them how the year's been. Like, how were your holidays? Again, just be human. If the opportunity arises, you can have a business conversation. If it doesn't, you're off the hook between now and Tuesday. I'm not asking you to pivot into a business conversation, mostly because I want you to do it. And if I told you go home and have 5 business conversations, 75% of you would come back on Tuesday not having done it. Trust me, I've been doing this a really long time. Now, what's interesting is that only about 30% of you would admit to not having done it. And yet 75% of you would come back on Tuesday having not done it. So 5 people in 5 days have a care call. Just reach out, challenge yourself if you want to, by having conversations around or with people who you haven't seen in a while, who aren't as close to you. And if you are experienced or you're not afraid of pivoting to a business conversation, then do so if you choose. But it's not a requirement. If you choose to pivot to a business conversation, what is it you could say? Go ahead, Alex.
I tend to be very direct, so I might say, wow, do you have any idea how little inventory there is right now because things have been just so explosive?
That's a good one. Does everyone realize we're in a massive inventory shortage? Right? There's not a whole lot out there to sell. So we need inventory. Why is that information that's a benefit to the people you're speaking to?
Price of their asset, of their home is really high if they put it on the market now, if they're listing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Now, this is not you saying, sell, sell, sell. Instead, it's you saying, hey, these are the circumstances we're in right now, just in case it makes sense for you. I'll tell you what I used to do. I used to do the care call up front, and my pivot was, hey, Donna, just before I let you go, do you mind if I give you like 30 seconds from a business perspective? Because there's some really interesting information to share. It's just a little permission-based script to pivot me into delivering some information. Now, here's what's interesting. 80% of the time, when they know you're a real estate agent, you know that moment in a conversation where there's not a lot left to talk about and it starts to, like the pauses start to get a little longer? Well, if they know what you do, they will bring you there. They'll bring it up. You don't have to. Hey, how's work? Hey, how's the market? Hey, what's going on? Are New Yorkers still fleeing the city? I hear they're coming here in droves. I hear if you have a pool, you get, 50% more than what your house is supposed to be worth. All those things will pop up. And if they don't, you have the opportunity to pivot the conversation. Again, if you choose. This first go around, don't make it about that. Donna and then Katie.
And here's something else, at least in the last 8 months since we've been in the pandemic. When you call with these care calls and you're asking people about themselves, sometimes they'll share with you and sometimes they won't. You'll have to ask an extra question or 3 or 5. And yet there is a really good reason why the governor marked us as essential workers and didn't shut us down. And that is because people need our services no matter what's going on. And when you're asking them, you may find out that they are in a situation where there might be some financial situation. They lost a job, somebody's sick, someone passed away, I need to move, whatever that is. And now you've just told them some information that can get them out of that. They could be sitting on equity that they don't realize, they haven't thought about it in that way. So when you're telling them about inventory and the fact that right now they can probably sell their house quicker and perhaps for more money, that could be an answer to a prayer. So we're not calling to bother them. We're calling them to help them with their life situations. And that was such a 180 for me during the pandemic. I realized how much our clients need us, and it's almost selfish for us not to share that with them.
Yeah, I love that description. It's almost selfish, right? Not to care. Not to care. Now some of you may be listening to some of these conversations and thinking it sounds like justification for bothering people. Guys, again, if that's your mindset, you are going to struggle building a business. You've got to move from that mindset of I'm bugging people to I'm helping people. I'm contributing to their lives. I'm taking a stand on caring about them and caring about what happens to them. When you build a business based on contribution, guess what? That shows up. And what's interesting is that when you build a business based on contribution and then act as such, guess what happens? People are excited to hear from you. They're excited to hear from you. If all of a sudden you don't call one month, they're like, oh my goodness, yeah, we were like, where have you been? We've become estranged. What's happened here? Right? It's crazy. It's crazy. They kind of get addicted to that conversation. They get addicted to that community that you're building with them. Especially today. Especially today, right? Because we're more divided both physically and every other way you can think about being divided, right, than ever before. And so when you begin to build community inside of your database, people crave that. Here's the other thing I want you to be cautious around, and then Katie, I'm coming right to you. I want you to be cautious about making judgments based on how you feel about something. Right? People oftentimes say to me, oh, I could never call my database because I hate it when people call me. Okay, well, maybe you're like the Grinch of community. I don't know. But just because you're that way doesn't mean that all the people in your database are that way, right? So remember that this is not the sun revolving around you. It's the sun revolving around your database. It's you revolving around your database. So don't make judgments about how other people might feel receiving a care call if you decide one way or the other, right? Because it's not about you. Okay, Katie, I made you wait long enough. Sorry, go ahead.
Not at all. I was just curious. So since I'm brand new, how would you kind of approach doing these calls to people, but then also letting them know that you did, switch careers and you are now a realtor or, an associate. And if they, I don't know, hear of anyone or think of anything, and maybe that's coming up in a future script, but when you were talking about it now, it's like, most people wouldn't know that I've made that change.
Exactly. And it's coming up right now because I was waiting for somebody to ask it, right? And so thank you for bringing us right there, because there's enough of you on this call who don't have much experience or any experience, right? Some of you have been licensed for a day and a half, and you're kind of like, all right, well, so now what? I'll tell you what I did. What I did was I took a stand on not being new. And the way I got around not being new, or the way I got around being new, was not a big surprise, script work. I just wrote scripts that helped me convey what I had done and where I was headed and what I was looking for in a script. And so my script was, hey, Katie, it's Rick Scott. How are you doing? It's been a while. Hey, listen, I just wanted to give you a call, see how things were going, see how you were, right? Start with the personal. Hey, before I let you go, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that I had opened a powerful real estate firm. And I am on the hunt for anyone and everyone who I could assist, taking advantage of the massive benefits the market is going to bring to both buyers and sellers right now. I'm curious, who do you know that might need my services? So that's how I conveyed to people that I was in a new, now, there are some people, Eric, I'm going to come to you in just a second. There are some people that clearly Weller, oh my goodness. Is it the end of the day? This is Rick's English as a second language class. That you know better than not, or know you better, right? They know you just left a different career and are you either retired or you made a switch, or you moved from somewhere else and you're starting a new, like they know that. So clearly in those scenarios where it's already known, you're just going to remind them. Those people, typically there's more of a relationship, so such that you don't necessarily need to manipulate that any. So in those scenarios, I would just simply go, hey, don't forget, real estate's my gig now. Would it be okay if I told you what I was on the hunt for? If I told you what I was looking for? And then just tell people, I am looking for people to help. I can help them purchase a house. I can help them sell their house. I can help them create wealth by having them invest in property. Right, so the answer, Katie, is a little different depending on who that person is in your database, but those are really the two. There's either going to be people who already know or people who don't know that you want to tell. And so for me, it was always, I've opened a powerful real estate firm. Let me ask you this question. Is that true?
Yes. Well, yes, because we're independent contractors, so it's our own business. So we have. You got it.
You got it. That's exactly right. Right. So don't judge that. Just accept it. You have opened a powerful real estate firm. You've done it. It's your company, and it's powerful if you choose it to be powerful. Right. So there's nothing in there that is fabricated.
Right. Thank you.
Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, Rick, just a question around potential stalking. So how long, or is there a time limit, a limited time that you cannot contact people anymore? I just recall from real estate university, the exams, that there was like an 18-month limit after buyers or sellers you had as clients that you have to stop contacting them.
Yeah, so you're really addressing the do not call list, right? And so we're going to come to that. I'm going to ask that we hold that off. Once people are in your database, trust me, they'll let you know whether or not that they're interested in maintaining contact and connection.
All right. Just want to understand the culture, that's all.
Yeah, but the idea of after 12 or 18 months, again, it's hard for me to know what the instructor was referring to on that. But it's not like all of a sudden after 12 months they expire out of your database or whatnot.
Rick, I just want to make a point on that, and that's that as you know, I've called people for a year and a half, haven't gotten any calls back, haven't heard boo from these people. But because I was calling them for a year and a half to say hi, when it was time for them to do something, they called me. Hadn't heard them, you two, Donna. So it doesn't, just don't think that, obviously you don't leave a message every other day, but just don't think that even if what you're doing is leaving a message, wishing them well, that you're not getting brownie points. That's absolutely brownie points. And then, if they ever say, stop, then you go build brownie points somewhere else. But almost never happens, and the brownie points count. They remember you.
Yeah, really good point, Andy. Really good point, right? It's not always instantaneous. It's not always same year, right?
No.
But here's the good news. The incubation process exists for a reason. Because they need you when they need you.
Right.
Right. The biggest mistake that real estate agents make is believing that the potential client, or at least the database person, always needs real estate help and attention. And then you get frustrated when you dial through and nobody needs to buy or sell their house. Right, that's just the way it goes. That's the reason you keep in constant communication is because lives change. And just because nobody last month had any kind of needs, that doesn't mean this month that all of a sudden, like Alex was not at her breaking point last month. At this month, she is totally at her. Now she's done. Right now, she just heard that like her version of her appointment date for the vaccine is in June, and she's like, I'm out. Right, I'm going to a country where I can get it quickly, or something. Right, something changes in people's lives. People are transferred. They change jobs. A spouse dies, or someone gets married. They have babies. They need bigger houses. Their kids go off to college and don't come back like mine seem to continue to do, and need a smaller house. Right. And I love having them home. I love having them. My son, as a joke for Christmas, one of the gifts he bought us was a bird nest with lots of eggs in it. He's like, here's your empty nest, but look, it's not empty because we all left and we just keep coming back. I'm like, okay, maybe someday. All righty, so we're down a bunny trail. I'm going to pull us back from the bunny trail and push us forward on continuing to go through the 36 touch. You know what? I probably should just look quickly here and make sure there are no questions in here. I'm sorry, guys. If I don't answer your questions in the chat, it's only because I'm not paying attention to the chat. So it's sometimes easier if you unmute, and I will. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Yep, and yep. Okay. I think I've actually answered a lot of these. So. Yeah, Jay says 10 people a day. You could certainly connect with 10 people a day if you were doing cold calling, right? We're going to talk about the cold calling versus warm and hot calling in just a minute. It's always good to know how your clients prefer to be contacted. I always ask text or call or email. They tell me, and then you can make a note in the command client card. So that's a really good point, right? Do your clients like phone calls? Do they like emails? Do they like texts? Here's my advice to you. I would absolutely know that. Certainly your clients, right? I used to have a client communication form. So anytime a new client hired me, either buyer or seller, they would fill out a communication form telling me how they preferred to be communicated with. Now, if a seller said, I only want you to email me, my answer was awesome. So your updates for like showings and things that come on Mondays and Thursdays, we can set up to come to you via email. However, there will be at least a weekly phone conversation. I make those either on Monday afternoons or Thursday afternoons, which is best for you, right? And so be careful that you don't fall into the trap of, well, they told me they only wanted to hear from me via email, so therefore I never called them. I'll tell you why, because I have lived this story, right? Only email me unless there's an offer. I don't want to hear from you. Okay, great. So like 3 weeks went by, 4 weeks went by, there was no offer. And like by the third and a half week, I was pulling the hair out of my head thinking like, this feels too weird. I haven't spoken to this person. It just feels odd not to have this communication with this person. So I called them. I said, hi, Mr. whatever your face is. It's Rick Scott. I just wanted to check in and see how things were going. And here's what I heard back. Well, look who decided to call. I thought, well, no. You told me not to, this is all going in my head. Like, you told me that you only wanted to hear from me via email. Guys, that is simply not true. They don't want to be bombarded with stuff that they don't care about. However, they absolutely want to know that you are on the job, on target, connecting with them, communicating information. So even when people tell you, please don't call me until you have an offer, you have to set them straight. That's not how you run your business. You have to step up and into that to say, I completely understand. Here are the things we can automate. Here are the things that I am unwilling to automate. Minimally, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we will have a phone conversation once a week. I do those on Thursday or Monday afternoons, which is best for you, right? You see my point? And the same thing goes with text. Text is a great means of communication. It's still not a phone call, right? So be careful that you don't get stuck in communicating with your fingers, because text and email is all about communication via finger. It's not with your mouth. And I would encourage you that with clients, especially with signed clients, buyers or sellers, there is a phone to phone, Zoom to Zoom, or face-to-face conversation every single week. With people in your database, we're going to go through this system real quick right now to show you exactly what that looks like. In your database, we're talking about once every 3 months, right? People in your database should hear from you every 13 weeks or so. It's a 4-time-a-year gig, either face-to-face, phone-to-phone, or Zoom to Zoom. Make sense? But your clients need to hear from you every single week. Great point, Elena. Okay, good. Do not call. Yes, we're going to talk about do not call, Eric. I promise you that. So Jay, you asked me a question in here. Now, by looking at you, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. You're clearly younger than I am, but I don't understand what you asked me. So can you translate?
I think I asked for your Instagram.
Oh, okay. So now I feel stupid, right? You did ask Instagram. I did not know what IG is. Here's what I can tell you. I do not have Instagram. I promise to be better at this for all of you. I promise you that. It was one of my 2020 goals that didn't happen. So I have now moved it to 2021. Donna's probably heard me say this for 4 years, but I have now decided. So for those of you who know Christine Olyenik is an agent in the Stanford Market Center who is awesome at social media. And so I have asked her to kind of mentor me through moving me from where I am to where I need to be. Like just like Donna Gilbert volunteered to be my reading coach, right? I have Christina Yannick lined up to help me be better on my social media. And the first thing I'm going to be better at, I promise, is learning what the questions are. So IG, Instagram, okay, got it. The fun news is that this got recorded, so we can all go back and relive my shame. The second I have an Instagram account, Jay, I will let you know what it is so that you can tag me in all the posts. All right. When is email considered spam? In my book, it's when it has nothing to do with anything helpful, right? So if you're constantly reminding people about market stats, or reminding people when the fireworks are for 4th of July, or reminding people about tips for staging their home, right? All that kind of stuff is industry related, and it speaks to most people most of the time. So just make sure, and if you're using programs that are already built for you in Command, that stuff is actually scrubbed, not to necessarily be considered spam. So I would just use that. Great. So Elena makes a great point. Calling people is nice, doesn't have a paper trail. My solution to that when they're your clients is you always have a phone-to-phone conversation and follow it up with something in writing, right? So the way I always did that was we'd have a phone conversation, we'd make decisions verbally, and then I would follow that up with an email. Hey, it was so great to speak to you earlier. I just wanted to confirm that these are the things that we decided, and here's how it's going to happen. Push send. So now you do have the paper trail to make sure that when somebody comes back and says, well, you never said that. Well, we did actually have that conversation. It was on the 3rd, and if you check your email, you can see that I kind of summarized that conversation in an email to you, right? So then you have that. Good point. Good point. I do know what LMAO stands for, though, so that's fun. Okay. Oh, yes, we are all in sync. All right, I'm going to cruise forward because we're already an hour in and we're only on number 2. So in power session number 2, I want to just show you where to review this 36 touch. In power session number 2, if you don't have it open, that's okay. You can just mark down that you should review page 29, right? Review page 29. And that outlines the 30, it's the 33 touch in this book. Gary's updated that to the 36 touch. Let me just give you a little background on where the 36 touch came from, right? The 36 touch came from the MREA, right? The MREA is not somebody's opinion about how to run a real estate business. Instead, it's years of research of the top agents across the country, brand blind, right? Gary interviewed tons of people not with Keller Williams. He actually interviewed more people not with Keller Williams than he did with Keller Williams. So brand blind, top agents across the country. And then he just distilled down what they told him and built models around them. He said, okay, all the top people told us they did this. And the average number of times that the top agents in the country told him that they communicated with their client database was 36 times. That was the average. So that's where these things come from. He didn't wake up one morning and say, what if we just started talking to people every 10 days? No, he went out and asked people what they did to create the success that they had, and then just built a model around it. So on page 29, what you'll see is how that breaks down. All right, I already told you it's 4 phone calls a year. Here's what's fun. How many weeks are there in a quarter? 13, right? So there's 13 weeks in a quarter. How many letters are in the alphabet? The Roman alphabet. 26, right? I still remember we were in class one time. We were actually here in class one time, and I asked how many letters in the alphabet, and someone said 33. I said, really? I don't think the Cyrillic alphabet or the Roman alphabet has 33. So I'm not sure which alphabet we were speaking of.
Cyrillics, I would answer that too.
Is it 33 in Cyrillic? Ah, see, I didn't think that we were speaking Cyrillic, but there we go. Now we know. Now we know. Where was I going? So 26 in the letters in the alphabet, 13 weeks in a quarter. Divide 26 by 13. If you want a system around getting through your database, just call 2 letters every week. Call 2 letters every week. There are systems out there. There's people have paired certain letters so that you're never like, in overload mode calling ST, or in a week where you're calling YZ, and so therefore you're not making any phone calls that week. You can, if it were me, I always just make it simple. A, B, C, D, E, F. I didn't pair letters with other letters to even out the numbers. So if you're looking for systems to get through your database, just keep it simple. Or divide your database by 13. However many people are in your real estate database, divide that by 13. That's how many people you have to get through to every week. And oh, by the way, we're talking about contacts, we're talking about connections, right? If you dial through all the A's and you get one person, well, you're not done with the A's, you haven't spoken to them, right? Now, what you may find is that a combination of text and call helps to obtain this, right? So if you're my point is, if I've tried Donna twice because I'm on the G's and I'm not getting her, I might text her. Hey, Donna, it's Rick Scott. I wanted to just ask you a quick question and see how you were doing. When's a good time for me to ring? Because maybe she's seen me phone and just thought, oh, I don't want to talk to him. I know it's hard to believe. I mean, look at us. How could anyone deny us a phone call? Take a look around. Not only are we smart people, we are one good-looking bunch of people.
We are beautiful.
I'm telling you what. And yet, do believe that sometimes people push decline when you call. That's just real. It's just the way it goes. So if I text Donna first, she may be more inclined to pick up the phone the next time that she sees it's me, right? So use that as a way to grab people as well. And so if you're on page 29, the rest of the touches are going to be a combination of set it and forget it emails, right? So automation with emails. I think you can get away with like every other week in emails. So like 24 touches of the 36 emails, bam. 4 phone calls, now you're up to 28. Right now there's only 8 more touches. For me, it was always a quarterly postcard, like a large jumbo postcard that always showed people my pattern of success. It always showed all the houses that I sold. If you haven't sold any houses, ask to borrow some sales. Ask your colleagues. Hey, I'm putting together a postcard. Would you mind if I used your sales on my postcard? And then just change the pronoun from I to my team and I. Look what my team and I accomplished in the last 3 months. Right? And then, of course, any kind of seasonal stuff or events, right? Seasonal things or events. That kind of fills out the 36 touches. Events are awesome. We'll talk about events likely on Tuesday. Events are awesome because you get a touch with the invite. You get a touch with a follow-up the same day to make sure that they're coming. And then if they do attend the event, you get to see them at the event, either in person or nowadays with via Zoom. Someday personal again. And then you get another touch on the afterward on the tail end, thanking them for coming. And if they didn't show up, you give them a shout after the event to say, you know what, we so missed you. We're having another one on this date. pencil it in now so you can be sure you come. Right? Now, the good news is that in Command, you can build a 36 touch. You can use one that's already designed for you, or you can build your own to help either get the automated stuff out on your behalf that does it for you, and or remind you about putting something in the mail or making that phone call, so that you don't have to necessarily remember 36 different touches. Do you see that by connecting every 10 days or so, really what you're doing is just this. You're just kind of tapping them on the forehead every few days to say, remember, 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 remember. And when you do it well, it's not annoying. When you do it well, people don't even recognize that it's happening. It's just very subtle. And it's just, they just remember you. Here's how I know it works. About 3 or 4 years ago, an agent called me and said, I have a buyer moving to North Carolina. Do you know anyone in North Carolina that I can refer the business to? And I immediately, I think I scared her. I said, Michelle Edwards. And she said, who's Michelle Edwards? I said, I don't know, but I know that she works in North Carolina. You know how I know that? Because for 10 years prior to this agent asking me for someone in North Carolina, every single month I would get an email from Michelle Edwards. Clearly, I met her at some event when we first opened the first market center. She was a KW agent back in North Carolina who connected with me somehow. Clearly, it wasn't on social media, right, Jay? But I probably met her at an event or whatnot, and she just put me in her database. And every single month, I got an email. What did those emails say? What were they about? I have no idea, because I never opened them. Some of you worry so much about the content, most of your content is not ever going to be read. Her subject line had her name, the word referral, and North Carolina in it every single time. She would send things out. Merry Christmas from Michelle Edwards, your referral resource in North Carolina. Happy Valentine's Day from Michelle Edwards. Spring greetings, happy summer, happy 4th, whatever it was. She was big on seasonal stuff. Once a month. And so after 10 years, that's 120 touches. Michelle Edwards, North Carolina referral. Michelle Edwards, North Carolina referral. Somebody finally asked the question, and I blurted out Michelle Edwards. Said, you know what, North Carolina is a big state. We should probably figure out where your buyer's going and see if Michelle Edwards actually services that territory. It just so happens she did, right? It was Raleigh-Durham, and this person was moving to Raleigh-Durham. And so we connected them. Michelle Edwards sold them a $500,000 house. Our agent got a referral fee. That one sale was 10 years in the making. But it wasn't 10 years of a whole lot of work. It was 10 years of put somebody in your database, set it and forget it, and just have the system take care of it. Now imagine how many houses she sold every year, because I wasn't the only person she did that to. She did that with everyone she met, with all agents from across the country. We're going to talk about building a system of agent-to-agent referrals as well. But isn't that nuts? So do you see how important it is to just be top of mind? Just be top of mind. People get really hung up on what they send, how they send it. I had an agent once come to me and say, I'm so upset. I just bought like 300 postcards and I have to throw them all in the garbage. I said, well, why on earth do you have to throw them in the garbage? She said, well, look at the back. I looked at the back, I looked at the front, looked at the back again. I said, what? She said, look down towards the bottom. There's a typo. The has an extra E. It says the, T-H-E-E. I said, you've got to be kidding me. She said, I can't send that out. What will people think of me? I said, what will people think of you? You should be so lucky that someone says, look at this, there's a typo at the bottom of this postcard. You should be even luckier that they call you and say, you know what, I am so offended that you sent me this card because there's a typo at the bottom. No one's even going to read your postcard. Your name is there and real estate. If they go through their mail, anything like me, they go through their mail like this and throw it in the garbage. As long as they see your name in some version of real estate, it's a win. She did not send those cards out. She threw all 300 of those in the garbage. What I should have done is I should have taken them to make a point, and I should have printed mailing labels with my name on it and my phone number and stuck it over her name and mailed them anyway to show her how it doesn't matter what you're sending, right? So be really careful about that. I'm not saying have your business look like crap. I'm not saying do things that aren't professional. What I'm saying is be careful about getting too hung up on such minuscule details that it prevents you from actually taking action. Because that's what this was. This was a waste of time, a waste of money, a waste of energy, a waste of a conversation with me. Like, it was a waste of everything. Where if she just would have put the stickers on and sent them out, I think if it were me, if I was that freaked out about it, instead of a mailing label with their name on it, I would do a mailing label with their name on it, stick the mailing labels on, and then draw a little arrow on each card and say, sorry about the typo, call me soon. Right? Make fun of it. Who cares? Lighten up, right? Lighten up. This is not brain surgery. It's real estate. Like, we're not saving lives here. All right, questions, comments, concerns on the 36 touch system? Yes, ma'am. Michaela.
Was that ripping up of the paper scripted? Do you rip up a piece of paper every single session?
Great question. You know what? I'll leave that to Donna or Bogdan to answer.
Interpretation.
Go look at previous recordings.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, so here's the answer to that question. Do I rip up papers every single time? Yes, it's not always in the same spot.
I have
Right.
a question.
I know you crumple it and throw it in the back seat. I do know that.
Yes, that's when we talk about buyers. Yes, Bogdan.
Where can we find the 36 touches?
So that is going to, you mean where in command? Yeah, that's a great question that Debbie can answer for you at 3 o'clock on Wednesday. So be sure to be on her call at 3 o'clock on Wednesday. She will walk you through. I will make sure that she knows that you guys need to be able to locate and activate the 36 touch program. I don't know the answer to that question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys, 5:19. Want to move on to the next source of business? Yes? Okay. 2 people said yes, so I count on head nods. Okay, good. So you know what? Let's do this again. So vote again. No database loyalty program and no social media. Where do you want to go next? Oh, baby. Okay. All right, keep going. There's a bunch of you who didn't vote. Is that because you put the You turned off your camera and you're like cooking dinner or emptying the dishwasher or something. All right, voting's going to close. In 5, 4, 3, 2. So here's where we're going next. Go to expireds and for sale by owners. That's so exciting to me. So we'll do that, and then we'll do open houses, and then we'll probably pick up the rest of these on Tuesday when we meet again. So for sale by owners, all right, and expireds. One thing before we move into that that I didn't mention that I remembered when I was picking up my ripped pages, for those of you who are new or newer to the industry, there is a statistic I want to make sure you understand. And that is that 88% of people say they would use a real estate agent that they used to buy their house, again, to sell their house. What percent actually do nationwide? 12%. So I don't know about the rest of you, but that screams opportunity to me, right? Screams opportunity. If most people say, I would absolutely use my agent, and yet only about 12% do, what that says is most agents are terrible at follow-up. They're terrible at staying in communication. They're terrible about creating community inside of their past client database. Because when you create community and you continually follow up and you utilize a system like the 36 Touch loyalty program, I call it a loyalty program. That's how you create loyalty. You're capturing mind share, right? You're capturing mind share. So if you're like stuck in your head about, you know what, I'm new to the industry, everybody I want to list already has a house, which means they used a realtor to buy it. So why would they possibly use me? Well, I just gave you the statistics that prove that you have an opportunity there, right? You have an opportunity to shine, outshine everybody else, including the person who sold them their house, including their best friend who's a realtor, who, by the way, they may not want to utilize because they don't want to risk the personal relationship, right? So just remember, there's tons of opportunity out there. Jay asked before what orphans were. I'll explain that, and then we'll move on to expireds, because it makes sense to explain that here. Does anybody want to tell us what orphans are? When we say orphans in real estate, what are we referring to?
They're the buyers or the sellers that who were on the other side of whatever transaction you're on, assuming you were not on both sides.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Andy. Especially, they are the buyers of your listings, right? It could be the other way around, right? It could be the sellers of something you sold if those folks are staying local. You could even decide, if you wanted to, if they weren't staying local, I guess you could decide to adopt them as orphans as well. Just trying to think through how reasonable it is to get a new address for somebody. Donna.
So here's an interesting wrinkle that just happened to me. I am the buyer's agent. The seller was not actually happy with his agent who listed his house. And I have gotten 2 referrals out of the transaction.
Love it.
His sister and a cousin or somebody else. He referred them to me, not to the agent that listed his house.
So let me ask you this question. Did that referral come because of an on-purpose orphan program, or was that just they recognized the job you did when you brought a buyer to their home?
Yes, and it happened. We were still in the transaction.
Wow.
Yeah. No, that's how underperforming the listing agent was.
Yeah.
And with
Yeah.
COVID and everything, everybody's home. So he got to actually see me, working with my clients, meeting the appraiser, doing everything that needs to be done. And he came to me one day and asked me, is it okay is it okay if I refer my sister to you?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So
Yeah.
this is a perfect time to remind everybody. You'll start to hear me say this about once or twice every single session. You are always modeling behavior. For good, for bad, or in between. You are always modeling behavior. And what the story Donna just told is a perfect example of that. Donna was modeling behavior, not necessarily auditioning for referrals for the seller. She was modeling the behavior that she models by working with her buyer clients the way she works with her buyer clients. Guess what? People noticed. People noticed. And because she was modeling behavior that was attractive to somebody, she got more business out of it. People are always watching, whether you think they're watching or not. Go ahead, Erica.
So I had a rental listing in December, and the buyer agent was coming with the client, and she said she just has to leave. So I am obsessive with excellence. So I was serving the client and going out of my way. So during the transaction, the client says to me, you know what? My daughter is in the military. She's going to need a home in February. I follow up with the client last week. She says, yes, my daughter going to need a rental. However, my brother is also coming out of the military. He has a VA loan and he's looking to buy a home.
Love
so
it.
The same thing like Dana. It's the same thing happened.
That's awesome. That's awesome, right? So again, you never know where it's going to come from. Eric.
Yeah, I didn't capture the principle of orphans. Can you quickly?
Yes, I'm going to circle back to it right now. So the orphans, we call them orphans because if in fact you're the listing agent, I'll just use this as an example. If you're the listing agent and someone brings a buyer to the table, you take care of the transaction. I always had an orphan program in my business. And so the orphans were the people who were brought as buyers to my listing by somebody else. The transaction's over now, so they're no longer represented. But I think of them as orphans because I know that there's a massive possibility. The odds are stacked against that agent actually following up and staying in communication with those people such that they will get repeat business from it based on the statistics I just gave you. So I actually had a program in place that week I would make sure I was in communication with the orphans to say, hey, just I know we never met in person, but I'm Rick Scott. I represented the Joneses, whose house you just purchased. Hey, I'm just checking in, 4 days after the closing to make sure everything's going well in the house. Did you have any questions? Is there anything I can do to make your experience better? And here's what's fun. 50% of the time, when I made that phone call, 50% of the time. Now, I don't know what percent of the time I actually beat the other agent to make the phone call. 50% of the time I made that phone call, they verbally told me something like, wow, thank you so much for calling. Our own agent hasn't even called. 50% of the time. Oh, Bogdan just put something awesome in the chat. Pies to orphans, gifts to orphans. So yes, I had that same program. Mine was 48 hours, 7 days, and 30 days. So those were the phone calls. And the 7-day phone call was sometimes a phone call. And more times than not, it was a visit to the house to give them a closing gift. I'd let about a week go by and make the first phone call, then deliver a closing gift to say thank you so much for buying the property, to help the Joneses move to Atlanta or whatever. So that's the concept of orphans, is that there's business on the other side of your transactions, especially when you're the listing agent, that is slipping through your fingers. You just heard stories where there wasn't even an on-purpose orphan program in place, and just based on performance, additional business came someone's way who wasn't representing that particular client. Imagine how that could be amplified if and when you put an actual program in place to be certain that you're communicating with these folks, right? Does that make sense? Does orphans make sense now? Yeah. Yeah. And so, of course, the tail end of your orphan program is a whole bunch of phone calls, maybe a visit, maybe a gift, and then they're in your database. So once they get added to your database, where do you put them? Right in your 36 Touch program. So now they're getting information from you. You're contacting them 4 times a year. I guarantee you it will be less than a year before they even remember that you didn't sell them their house. 12 months or less, they think you sold them the house, because it's just all about capturing mind share. It's all about capturing mind share. And sometimes you run into an agent on the other side who actually does a good job. Every once in a while, someone would call me and say, "Hi, would you do me a favor? I mean, you seem lovely, and I'm getting all your stuff, but we're kind of loyal to, to Maria Smith." Awesome. You know what? I love loyalty. Here's what I can promise you. I can promise you, if you'd like me to remove you from some of the things that I'm sending, that's awesome. Do me a favor. Still accept my call a couple times a year, just in case there's a question that you need answered and Maria is not available. So I was happy, didn't happen very often, but I was happy to step back, but I would still make the follow-up phone call. My 4 times a year stayed in place with a phone call, because I know that that's the most powerful part that the other agent isn't really doing. Questions about orphans? All right, we snuck orphans in there, so now you don't have to vote for it because we kind of did it.
How do you
Yes.
get the contact for these orphans? It's usually very hidden. The email, the phone, so probably visit to the house. That's when you get the contact.
Yeah, so great question. So I used to get it just from the contact information sheet inside of the transaction, right? If you're not asking for contract information sheets in your transactions, I would absolutely ask the listing agent to produce one for you, right? To me, that's not optional paperwork. Both parties really need to have all the information for everyone, not just because you want to make contact afterwards for the orphans, but because during the transaction, right, that document needs to be circulated so that the buyer's and seller's information is there, the agent's information is there, the agency's information is there, the attorney's information is there. So everybody involved in the transaction knows exactly who all the players are and how to connect with them if need be. I would say that if there's a loan involved, like the loan officer's information is always on that contact information page. So that's where I used to get it from. I'm seeing some head nods that's where some other people are getting it from too, Elena. Does that help?
It does. I'm just here with you for 21st day. That's why I don't know. It might be stupid question, but I don't know this yet.
Yeah, no. So
Thanks.
here's what's spectacular about questions. That there is absolutely no such thing as a stupid question. Because if you don't know the answer, it's not stupid. And here's the other piece. If you didn't know that answer, I guarantee you at least 10 or 12 other people on this call also didn't know the answer, right? So thank you for putting it out there, because now everybody knows where to search for that. Thank you, I appreciate it.
I would like to add something, and I wrote it. That
Yes, sir.
We go after our own agents, orphans.
Oh yeah, really good point, Bogdan. Thank you for that clarity. Yeah, so remember that if you're selling a house from another KW agent, those are not orphans, right? We don't go after, we don't eat our own young, right? We don't cannibalize from within, right? That's only for without. If it's another KW agent, encourage that agent to make sure that they maintain contact, but we're not going to run our orphan program on our own folks. Awesome.
Rick,
All right. Yes.
Get some clarity on this. What about contacts? So we're going to be building out our database, and I'm friends with John Doe, and John Doe happens to have bought a house through, I'm gonna pick a name, Mara. And, bought a house from Mara last year, but I put that person in my database and they're part of my 36-point checkpoint or program. Does that provide like some kind of friction or conflict of interest, or how would you go about doing that?
So that's a great question. And I'm glad you asked it. So here's how I'll answer that. You guys belong to an organization of 550 real estate agents, right? In a county that has a limited number of people. And so overlap is absolutely impossible to avoid. It's impossible to avoid. And no one is asking any of you to avoid overlap in terms of who you know, how you know them, and how you market to them. Now, it doesn't become a problem until or unless the client themselves can't make a choice, right? So, and here's what I mean by that. So if John Smith was in my database and also in your database, and we were both marketing to that person, oftentimes we don't even know that there's overlap, right? I met them at an open house a long time ago. It happens to be like your best friend. Well, in that scenario, just because they're in my database and I've been marketing to this person I met at an open house for 5 years, and you got into real estate and they became your best friend, or they were your best friend, and you've been marketing, or a coworker, someone you have a tighter relationship with, you take the listing. I probably don't even get the phone call in that scenario, right? And so do I get to say, oh, that's too bad. I knew that person. Well, sure. But you also listed it, my colleague, instead of somebody at Coldwell Banker. And so the way I look at that is, well, better stay in-house than not. Now, again, where it gets complicated is if all of a sudden that particular person calls me and calls you and says, I just don't know what to do. I know both of you. I like both of you. Right. And so in those scenarios, my recommendation is let's not have the client be weirded out. Let's just you and I figure it out on the back end and say, hey, you know what? Why don't we just co-list this? Why don't we just do it together? That way the client doesn't have to pick. One of us doesn't have to lose. Right? There's enough business and enough money to go around all day long. You just have to choose a mindset of abundance, right? Where this doesn't work is if one of the parties comes at this with a mindset of scarcity. A mindset of scarcity is all about there's not enough and you're taking it from me. Right? In the scenario that I just explained, neither one of us was taking it from the other. Like we didn't even know until that client called and said, I don't know what to do. I know and love you both. Great. So you know what? Love us both. You get to pay once and get both of us. How's that sound? Right? We'll make you the deal of the century. It happens. It happens. And what we ask of the agents that are in business with us is that you always approach those kinds of conflicts. They don't happen very often. They don't happen very often where someone's going to make that phone call. Oftentimes the client will just simply choose. And what we ask of each of you is recognize that sometimes you're the winner and sometimes you're not. And sometimes you get the phone call and sometimes you don't. And respect one another. Play it the way you would expect somebody on the other side, if you were the one not getting the listing or you were the one not being hired, how you would want it to be played. Respect and disclosure first and foremost. I'll give you one more example of that kind of thing. Does that help, Niels?
No, it does. I just see how conflict is going to arise anyway if that actually does happen, because you're right. I mean, there's just a limited number of potential folks who are looking to buy or sell, and there are many of us. And
yep.
So I do think that is going to be an area of conflict potentially, especially for an organization as large as Keller Williams.
Yeah. Well, and here's what's interesting. It is now well, 16 years, almost 17 years that I have been a broker, and in the 12 years that I have owned both of these market centers, things like that, first and foremost, that actually make their way to my desk in like it's become a problem, I can probably count on one hand.
Okay.
On one hand, it just rarely happens that it isn't just worked out, right? And the other reality is that sometimes strangers call a couple of different agents inside of the same office. I think it's weird, personally. And I never experienced that when I was still in the field. When I was at Century 21, I was the Century 21 guy they called, right? There wasn't like, they didn't go down the roster and call other Century 21 people. Part of what's interesting about our organization is that our agents know how to market themselves. Our agents know how to be in front of people. Our agents know how to find and capture business. And so as our offices have grown and as our agents have become more and more skilled at obtaining more and more business, we do see that sometimes the seller calls 3 people and all 3 people are Keller Williams agents.
Hmm.
It just happens. Again, I think it's weird, and yet it happens. And what occurs in those situations is that everybody does the best they can to win the business, and the client gets to choose. And if you're the winner, you don't get to say nanny nanny boo boo to the other 2. And if you're not the winner, you get to say, hey, you know what, great job. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help you.
Yeah.
Right? And we just respect one another in a scenario that could be fraught with tension. Now, that is not to say, I am not being Pollyanna about this. That is not to say that all 550 people behave beautifully every time that happens. Because that is not realistic. That is not, sometimes I have to talk people off a ledge. I get the phone call. Donna Kiefert stole my listing.
Oh.
Really? Well, talk to me about that. Right? And what you find out was this person knew somebody that Donna just listed, but never even got a phone call to go and present. Donna didn't steal a listing. She was better at relationship than you, right? In that scenario, that person didn't lose a listing. They lost a relationship. They lost something far more important than a listing if they didn't even get the phone call, right? So sometimes I have to help people see things for what they really are. But the quick version of that question is respect for one another first, business second. That doesn't mean that there's an expectation that you will just simply walk away. It means that you'll always be respectful. It means that if you're going up against one of your own people in the office, you get to make a choice.
Hmm.
You get to make a choice as to whether or not you're going to go solo and they're going to go solo, or you're going to talk about it ahead of time and decide to go together. That's a choice. Maybe you want to do the together thing, but the other person's like, nah, I think I'm going to go solo. Then you just respect their choice. We don't talk bad about one another. I mean, frankly, you shouldn't talk bad about any agent, regardless of whether they're in the in-house or not. Right? The answer is always, yeah, you know what? They're awesome. Let me discuss with you what I bring to the table. Right? Be strong on your own value proposition. You don't have to crap on somebody else's, especially if they're a fellow KW agent.
Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome. All right, let's talk about expireds for the remainder of our time. Diane, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. When I was very new in the business, I was with a different realtor, and she used to pay me to do an open house. So I thought that I was collecting these, potential buyers, on her behalf, but I'm not getting that, from hearing the conversations at Keller Williams. I don't know. I mean, you might have just spoke about this and I was away, but but what's the the protocol is that if you're on an open house for another agent, you're taking, the information from these potential buyers and you're following up on them. For
So
your sale?
Yeah, great question. I'll answer that specific to open houses. If you're getting paid to sit at an open house, if I were paying you to sit at an open house, my expectation is that any leads that came from that open house, you would pass along to me.
Right.
If I'm paying you to sit at an open house. If you're just hosting an open house and it just happens to be my listing, that is your time, your effort, your leads, your everything. The only thing that is connected to me is that it's my listing. I just happen to be the listing agent. So everything goes to you. Is that the question?
Yes. I mean, I felt like now looking back on it, I feel like I'm just, I was pretty naive and I should have, approached it differently. Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting that the scenario that you described happened here one time. And we fired that agent.
Well, it's rampant at this other place.
Because the conversation was, he was telling people that he was telling new agents into the business that the job was sit in an open house for me to get experience.
Yes.
And everybody who comes in, you take their information, you give all those to me, I'll follow up with them. You get nothing. You get to spend your time and your effort, but you get experience and you get some learning. That went on for about 2 or 3 months before we found out about it.
Yeah.
As soon as we found out about it, we took some pretty swift action there. That was
yeah.
Because this was somebody who knew better, right? That's not a culture that we're interested in fostering. Right?
No, exactly.
But isn't illegal to get paid or to pay someone to sit at an open house?
Should be.
Well,
I don't know.
you're coming at it from a different perspective, Bogdan. You're coming at it from a how do people get paid perspective. And so I'll answer it this way. As long as it's paid through the market center, no. Just like showing assistance, as long as it's paid through the market
Which
center.
is cash.
Right.
Wanted to, make a point.
Yeah, I got it. All right.
But I mean, that's what it was, is her point is for me to get experience. That was her, point.
Yeah, I hear it. And sadly, I would rather you get experience and business at the same exact time, right?
Mhm.
When we talk about open houses, one of the things I'm going to ask those of you who have never hosted an open house is to connect with somebody and shadow an open house one time, right? You're all very smart people. Shadow an open house one time just to kind of get the lay of the land. There's your experience building. And then the very next one you do, so open house number 2, you're on your own, you're doing your own thing, and you're finding clients, right? Or else what a waste of time. I'm so sorry that occurred.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like putting up signs, balloons, I'm doing all this stuff for like some stupid amount of money. It was like ridiculous.
Yeah.
Sad, but sad.
Yeah. You're not the hired help, right?
No.
Because if you are the hired help, you should be able to demand what you get paid. And I guarantee you that you're too expensive.
Yeah. Well, I did, ask for more money on a distance that she wanted me to drive. Oh no, that's too far. No, that's too much money for that distance.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was the end.
Got it. All right, guys, let's do this because expired is going to take us too long. So as we tick out of time, I'm going to run through for sale by owners with you because that's actually a bit shorter. And I want to just give you the for sale by. I typically do expireds first and then for sale by owners because I want you to have a foundation for expired scripts. However, with the interest of time and making sure that we get through our source of business in due course, let's talk about for sale by owners. First and foremost, generally speaking, why do people decide to sell their home without a real estate agent?
They don't want to lose the commission that we're going to make.
Right. So it's almost always exactly that. It's almost always about money. Almost always. Right. And I have watched people get really, really on purpose in the wrong way about attempting to attract for sale by owners. So let me give you my tried and true for sale by owner process to help you climb on top of winning with for sale by owners. The first thing I'm going to say is, generally speaking, when I talk about for sale by owners, I start with for sale by owners are a very, very small piece of our business opportunity, because generally speaking, in Fairfield County, Connecticut, we don't have the volume of for sale by owners that exist in other parts of the country. Why is that? Can you guess why that is?
You want to make sure the paperwork's done right. You want to get an agent involved.
So Stuart says it's from getting it done correctly, right? And so that I think is absolutely part of it. There's a, and this is I mean no disrespect to any other part of the country when I say this, it is a simple reality that in Fairfield County. Go ahead, Michaela. What am I going to say?
They have money and they don't mind paying the commission for the service that they expect.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Right. Where we live and work, more people are worth more and or earn more and are willing to pay for services to make sure, as Stuart said, that it gets done correctly, that they're not going to screw it up, right? There's a level of education and a level of business savvy. Again, I'm speaking in generalities, that exists where we live and work that may not exist to the extent or the level in many other parts of the country. And so I believe that's a big part of why we don't see as many for sale by owners here as you do in other parts of the country. People have the money and are willing to spend it to make sure the job gets done properly. That being said, what we have seen in the last 6 to 8 months, right, with the market going crazy, is those same people saying, all right, well, yeah, I have it and I'm not afraid to spend it. And yet, with all these New Yorkers coming out of New York, do I really need to spend $20,000 on the list side? Can I just put it on myself and field all the offers that will come in, right? So we have seen a rise in for sale by owners. If you go on sites like, well, I'll use the Z word just cause. If you go on sites like Zillow, you can find for sale by owners in each town that are probably 2 or 3 times the volume that they were prior to the momentum of the market picking up. So what do you do when you see a for sale by owner? Here was my program. My program was I would reach out to them to say, hey, this is Rick Scott with Keller Williams Realty. I saw that your home was being sold privately, right? I never ever said the words on the market, because as far as I'm concerned with the for sale by owner, they are selling their home privately. They are not on the market. I reserved on the market for when you list with a real estate agent and we put you in the MLS. That to me is on the market. And I wanted to be very clear about those 2 separate things, right? And it'll make a little more sense later. I'm just curious if there's any help that you need to achieve your goal. Now, at that point, typically they would either say no, or I'm not looking to list. Yeah, no, that is clear. The for sale by owner in the front yard was the first tip that I got, that you're not looking to list. However, I do make it my business to make sure that I have a familiarity with all properties that are available for sale in this particular town, not just homes that are on the market with real estate agents. And so I was just looking to make sure that you didn't need any assistance in getting your home sold. Nope, I think we're all set. That's awesome. You know what? Thank you so much for taking my call today. If it's all right with you, I'll check in from time to time. Have a good day. Bye. Click. In that first call, do not tell them how wrong they are or how stupid they are, right, for listing on their own. Now, clearly, no one would ever call and say you're stupid for listing on your own. However, I have had experience with agents saying things like, are you aware that only 7% of people who sell on their own actually are successful? Guys, that's giving them statistics to help them prove their stupidity. You're calling them stupid without calling them stupid, right? Instead, you want to just be supportive. You want to make sure that they know you're there to help and give them some hope that they will succeed, because they might, and that's okay. That's their choice. It doesn't make them bad humans just because they didn't hire a real estate agent, right? They're probably lovely people. They just chose to go a different path. Call number 2, the Monday morning after the weekend that you call, right? So if you call on Tuesday, you're going to have the whole weekend go by, and then Monday morning, you're going to call again. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it's Rick Scott with Keller Williams Realty again. Just calling to check in. Hey, I'm curious, has the house sold? That's question number 1. Has the house sold? No, not yet. Got it. Hey, I'm curious, how was your traffic this weekend? And they'll tell you, oh, it was great. You know, we had 6 people come through. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Hey, I'm curious, anything I can do to help you get the job done? No, I think we're all set. I totally thank you so much. Appreciate it. Great. Have a good week. Bye. Another week goes by. It's Monday morning again. Hi, it's Rick Scott checking in. Hey, I'm curious, is the house sold? Hey, what was your traffic like this weekend? Oh, it's really slowing down. You're kidding. My goodness, our open houses were jammed. Hey, I'm curious, is there anything I can do to help you get your house sold? Nope, I think we're all set. Okay, bye. Are you getting the pattern here? And it's every Monday morning. Guys, I use this system like clockwork, and I'm going to tell you what. If you're the one who is continuing to check in on a weekly basis, 30 days later, here's what I know. 30 days later, you're the only agent that is still calling and checking in. Everybody else has given up. And 4 to 6 weeks into it is when most for sale by owners, if they haven't sold their property, throw in the towel. So here's how that looks. Like the 6th Monday. Hey, it's Rick Scott, just checking in. Is the house sold? Nope. Man, that must be so frustrating. Hey, I'm curious, how was your traffic this weekend? You know what? It really wasn't all that good. And we had someone specifically make an appointment for 3 o'clock on Sunday. We stayed home all day cleaning the house, and they stood us up. They didn't even have the decency to call. Oh, man, I am so sorry that happened. I hate that. Trust me, I am in this business 7 days a week, and I have seen it all. Hey, I'm curious. Would it be helpful if I shared some strategies on confirming appointments with you moving forward? Well, yeah, maybe. Great. Hey, I'm curious, before I let you go, is there anything else I can do to help you sell your home? Well, I don't know. Could you maybe just come over and take a look at it? Maybe we have it priced wrong. Maybe we're not doing something right. Absolutely, I would be thrilled to. I haven't pushed myself down their throat. They actually invited me. I never once asked them for their listing. They invited me. I never once told them that I wanted to come and preview their house for buyers that I didn't really have. Right? Don't lie to them. Just be helpful. Worked like a charm for me. And I think it'll work like a charm for you. I get a lot of questions sometimes. I know we're over the minute left, but I get a lot of questions sometimes about that, saying things like, well, what if they say, somebody told me that there are forms that I'm supposed to fill out. Like in week 2, when you say anything else I can help you with. Yeah, somebody told me that I was supposed to hand them a form when they came to view the house. I'm curious, are you speaking about the property condition disclosure form that's a requirement in our state? Well, yeah, I think they did say something about that. Yes, that actually is a requirement. Do you have that form? I don't. Would it be helpful if I sent you a copy of that form that you could then talk with your attorney about? Oh my goodness, would you do that? Yeah, absolutely. You know what? As soon as we finish this phone call, I'll just send you a blank over. I do advise that you speak to your attorney about it if you don't have real estate representation, however. Be helpful, give them the tools, show them how to succeed. And then when they don't, you're the one they will come back, I promise. Because you're the one who helped them over and over and over and over again.
All right, you were there.
All right, so we have a couple of quick questions. I have Alex who has a question, and then I think we have some questions in the chat. Go ahead, Alex.
Is that a script and can we have it?
It is a script. I'm happy to type it out and send it to you I'll send it out tomorrow morning.
Wow.
Because it's not in your materials. It's really just those 3 questions, right?
Yeah,
The script
I wrote-
itself is the 3 questions.
I took good notes, so.
Yeah, I'll be happy to kind of put that in a format for you. Absolutely. How do we get their phone number? So usually if it's a for sale by owner, they have a sign on the front lawn with their phone number on it because they want the buyers to call them. If they don't, you can either go and see if you can find it by doing like cyber stalking, see if you can find the number in like Cole Realty Resource or Spokio or one of those, free services. Cole is not free, but one of those free services.
That's
Oh.
them.com.
Say it again, Dogan?
Them.com. I put it twice in.
Oh yeah, that's them. That's them.com. We'll get to that.
Because if it's free, it's for me.
Yep. Perfect. That's them. Yes, absolutely. Coming from a place of generosity, help. Yeah. So that's the story, guys. It's a simple system, and I'll tell you what. If you'll trust it, it works. Don't fall into the trap of, hey, I want to list your house. Hey, I want to make sure that you know how wonderful I am. Hey. Because they've already decided they don't want you. So don't try and convince them that they do. Show them that they need you. Don't try and convince them otherwise.
If they don't pick up the phone, would you leave them that message every Monday? Like a message for them every?
Yeah, so great question. If it were me, I would not leave information like that in a message. My messages were always the same. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, it's Rick Scott with Keller Williams. I have a quick question about your house. If you can give me a quick call back. Be generic, be general. A for sale by owner will not call you back because they think the question is something about bringing them a buyer.
That's right. I forgot. Yeah, that's true.
Any last questions? Because we are out of time.
Yeah,
Yes,
Rick,
Nora.
so if we do see a sign, sell by owner, are we allowed to ring the doorbell?
Sure.
Okay, that's what I was just wanting to know. Thank you.
Yeah, just know what you're going to say though, and we'll talk about it. Right? If you're going to approach somebody's door, let's talk about that first thing on Tuesday. Guys,
Right.
it's a pleasure to spend time with you this week. You now have a number of days off. Remember your homework. I will see you back here Tuesday at 4. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Have a good night.
Hey, Bogdan, she lived
Yeah, but
for 9 years.